Monster Hunter World provides hunters with numerous tools and weapons to take on the beasts that roam the world. With each weapon comes a unique set of moves and mechanics that a hunter must master. With training and knowledge of these, a hunter can decimate the monstrous foes that lie in their way. I'm Darcblade, and in this video we're going to bring you a hunter's guide to the hunting horn. The hunting horn is an unusual weapon, resembling a large mace or club, but in fact it's more than just a blunt weapon. It's actually a musical instrument. With each hit you will perform notes that when strung together can be turned into a musical song. These songs provide buffs for not only you but your entire team. These buffs vary depending what instrument you're using, but they can provide things like attack buffs, defense buffs, health buffs and more. When using the hunting horn you can definitely fulfill a strong support role as you provide these buffs to your hunting party, but the hunting horn shouldn't be dismissed entirely when it comes to dealing damage. As I said, it does resemble a mace, and it can still pack a punch, especially when you aim at monster's head. Whilst not the fastest weapon in a hunter's arsenal, it nonetheless allows you to deal knockout and exhaust damage to a monster, which can potentially incapacitate them. This all makes the hunting horn a very unique weapon in Monster Hunter World. But anyway, let's move on to talk about the basic moves of the hunting horn. Now the hunting horn doesn't have many basic moves, and each move, each swing of the weapon is actually classed as a different note. But we'll get more into the notes and playing songs in the inner mechanics section. Anyway, the first move is the forward swing, which is done either from a drawn attack by pressing triangle or while pushing forward and then pressing triangle. This will also cue up a triangle note. Next is left swing, which is done by simply standing on the spot and pressing triangle. This again cues up a triangle note. Next is right swing, which is done while standing on the spot and pressing circle. This will also cue up a circle note. Next is double right swing, which can be done while moving and pressing circle. This is a 2-hit move that will cue up a circle note. Next is forward slam, which is done by moving forward and pressing triangle and circle. This will also cue up a triangle and circle note. Next is backward slam, which is done by pressing triangle and circle on its own. This will cue up a triangle and circle note and cause your hunter to move backwards during the slam animation. Next is handle poke, which is done in the middle of a combo by pressing back and either triangle, circle, or back, triangle and circle. This will play the respective note and cause you to poke with the handle of the hunting horn. Now this is the only attack with the hunting horn that actually isn't classed as blunt damage. It's classed as severing, so you can use this to potentially cut a monster's tail. It's also a fast performing move, so if you need to quickly get notes out, consider this as an option. Next is evade, which is done by pressing a direction in X or X on its own after an attack. This can be useful for when it comes to evading damage, or you can use it sometimes to cancel the performance or encore animations. Next is performance, which is either done from a draw attack by pressing R2, pressing R2 while standing, or by pressing any direction and R2 after an attack. Now depending on the direction you play will result in a different animation. For example, if you push forward in R2, it will cause your hunter to attack forward multiple times before actually performing whatever song is queued up. Backwards will cause your hunter to move backwards, slamming the horn along the way before going into the actual song. Left and right will also cause your hunter to swing in that respective direction before going into the song. Also, when you have different songs queued up, which we'll talk about more later, you can select what song you want to play by pressing R2, the performance button, and either triangle or circle to select the actual song you want. However, following a performance, you can press R2 a second time to perform an encore. This is pretty much the same as the performance move, but allows you to enhance a song or buff it in a different way. This again, like performance, can be edited slightly. So if you're pressing no direction and press R2 a second time after performance, you'll do a standard encore attack. However, if you push forward, back, left and right, it will also edit the move in exactly the same way as the performance move. So forward will cause your hunter to kick forward the hunting horn towards an enemy, hitting along the way. Back will cause your hunter to move back while lashing out with the hunting horn, with left and right causing your hunter to spin that direction, swiping along the way. But anyway, that's about it for the actual basic moves for the hunting horn. So let's move on to talk about the inner mechanics of the weapon. Now, as well as being able to deal blunt damage to a monster, this is not the main function of the actual horn. The main function is to perform notes with your attacks, which then combine into melodies or songs, which can then be performed to provide buffs for you and your hunting party. If you notice, underneath your weapon sharpness gauge there is a musical sheet, and every time you actually perform an attack, it will cue up the respective note. Here, you can have up to 4 queued before they start being replaced by your next attack. The notes you play depend on the weapon you're using, and the notes are indicated in the top right of your screen. These won't affect any of the buttons per se, so they will all have triangle notes, circle notes, and triangle and circle notes. So one weapon will have the circle button coloured red, whilst another weapon will have the circle button coloured green. Anyway, next to your notes, again in the top left, are the melodies or songs you can perform with the actual weapon you're using. These songs and melodies show the actual notes you need to play in order to receive the corresponding buff. So for example, to receive the attack up S, or small, you have to play a white note and 2 reds, which corresponds to triangle, circle, circle. So as a player, while you're attacking, make sure you perform these combos, and then once you successfully perform a buff, for example the attack up S, the triangle, circle, circle, it will be queued up and stocked next to the music sheet, again in the top left of the screen. You can have 3 of these stored before they start being replaced by newer songs. Anyway, once you have any songs stored, you can have up to 3 of them stored, like I said. Once you press R2, you will perform the actual melody or melodies. You can perform multiple ones. You can perform pretty much every melody that is stocked if you have time. If you do have multiple songs queued up and want to play them all, then you press R2 once, and then afterwards each song will be played in order automatically. If not though, you can either evade to cancel, or press R2 a second time to stop what you're doing and perform a encore. But we'll talk about that more in a minute. Anyway, once you've successfully played the melody, the corresponding buff you have played will be highlighted in green in the top right corner of the screen. So putting it simple, while attacking a monster, attack with the notes you want to get the buffs you want, and once you've actually got the songs stocked up and stored up, go into Performance R2 to actually gain the buffs, rinse and repeat. Of course it's easier said than done to actually get all the buffs, as a monster will be fighting back, and you may even mess up the notes and have to start again. Now the encore mechanic is a way to play the songs you've played already a second time. This will normally strengthen or enhance or extend the time of the buffs, but requires you to go into that performance animation one more time. Anyway, should you successfully be able to perform the encore, then the buffs in the top right of the screen will light up purple, indicating that they have been enhanced. Now the useful thing about going for encore is it means that you don't have to queue up the notes a second time in order to get that enhanced buff. But should time not allow for an encore, you can simply queue up the notes again and perform the same melody song again. So for example, again taking the attack up small buff, the triangle, circle, circle. If you perform this, you should have the attack up turn green, and then should you try to go for encore but fail, then you would have to do triangle, circle, circle and then perform it, and this will be the equivalent as if you had played the encore during the first performance attack. If you should encore at the end of playing all 3 songs, then you will encore all 3 songs afterwards. But as I said, if you are in danger of getting hit, remember you can evade roll to actually cancel out of the animation and save yourself. It should be also noted as well that with each weapon comes a different series of buffs. They're not all the same, so when you're actually creating a hunting horn and crafting one, consider what buffs it provides before actually crafting it. Anyway, the last inner mechanic that we're going to talk about is the flourish. Now attacks with the hunting horn that have 2 swings, for example the double right swing, which is moving while pressing circle, during the second swing you can actually input another note without actually having to perform the animation. So for example, perform the double swing, so a direction and circle, and then during the second swing press say triangle and circle, and it will input the triangle and circle note onto the music grid. This is a nice way to queue up melodies that require a lot of notes, as it can really save time. However, you should keep an eye on the music sheet or music grid, because when performing attacks it will sometimes prompt you with the predicted note. For example, it says plus and then it will give you the note and the corresponding buff should you actually press that attack. So this can be a quick way of reminding yourself of upcoming melodies you can stock. But anyway, let's move away from the inner mechanics to talk about the useful combos for the hunting horn. Now a few disclaimers here. The hunting horn, all of its attacks string together really well. There's no real natural end to a combo unless you're actually including performance attacks. With that being said as well, all the combos for the hunting horn are kind of dictated by the buff melodies you play. Nonetheless though, should you get to a point where you actually have all the buffs active and they have a decent duration left, then you could consider using these combos. The first would be a simple combo in place, which is done by pressing circle, triangle, circle, triangle. This causes your hunter to hit left and right whilst remaining in place. The next is a slight variation of this, and it utilizes the double swing. This is done by pressing triangle and then a direction and circle, triangle, direction and circle, and repeat. Next is a combo that actually the game suggests, which I find quite useful. This is definitely a combo that can be useful should you be able to hit a monster's weak point like the head. This is done by pressing circle, then forward triangle and circle, then triangle and circle again to move yourself backwards, and then forward and triangle to move yourself back into position. The next is the double swing forward slam combo, which is done by pressing the direction and circle, and then forward and triangle, rinse and repeat. Now because this utilises the double right swing, it means that you can perform a flourish, adding other notes should you be queuing up different songs. Again, this is a nice little combo to use should you be able to hit a monster's head. Now of course, with all of these combos, should you get an opportunity, then you can implement the performance and encore attacks. So for example, a combo that I often use that utilises the performance and encore attacks would be forward circle, then forward triangle and circle, followed by a second triangle and circle, then push forward and R2, and then forward and R2 again when it's time to perform the encore. Now as I said though, the direction of the encore depends on the situation of the fight. Also, you have to be aware that all of these combos will be dictated by the buffs you and your team actually require, so you have to change them up and try to get all of your buffs active. But anyway, let's move away from the useful combos to talk about the environmental and aerial maneuvers of the hunting horn. Now this weapon isn't the best in the air. Nonetheless though, you can perform a jumping strong overhead smash by sliding down a hill and pressing triangle. You can perform a jumping smash as well whilst you're mid-air by pressing triangle. This is either after jumping off a ledge or running up a tree or wall and then pressing triangle. You can also perform the performance attack mid-air while jumping off a wall or ledge by pressing R2. After you land, you will go into the actual performance of the song. But anyway, let's move on to the additional tips for the hunting horn. Now when it comes to performance and encore attacks, these attacks create a shockwave rather than a blunt hit per se. However, this shockwave has high attack value. On top of that, it also has high stun value, meaning that with these attacks, you have a decent chance of knocking over and knocking out a monster. It's also advisable with all of the attacks with the hunting horn to learn their attack arcs. Their arcs are really slow, and you normally want them to connect with the monster's head for optimal performance. This is especially vital when it comes to learning the performance and encore attacks, as you're able to press a direction, forward, back, left and right, and edit the actual attack you do with these moves. It's something that you have to put a little bit of time in getting used to. It should be a no-brainer as well with this weapon that trying to keep all your buffs active is one of the priorities with the hunting horn. Now remember that performance and encore does have a long animation, but as soon as you see the buff in the top right light up green or purple, then consider cancelling the song by rolling out of it. However, should time allow and you have multiple songs and melodies queued up, then it could be considered more efficient to get all 3 melodies played rather than have to worry about queuing up the correct notes again. Also remember that even though I talk about going for a monster's head a lot because of the knockout damage, remember that the hunting horn also has exhaust properties, meaning that even if you can't hit the head, should you just be able to hit a monster's body, legs, whatever, then it will build up the exhaust status, making a monster tired and more sluggish. When it comes to the different buffs as well, if there is an S next to it, it means it's a small buff, normally around 10%, whilst an L means a large buff, normally meaning around 20% of that buff effect. Also with the additional tips as well, remember that you do have a self-improvement buff. This melody is quite short but only really affects you, it won't affect your teammates. Nonetheless though, you should strive to get this active 2 times to improve your own performance, on top of your other melody buffs. Another tip for the hunting horn is that you can actually perform the songs outside of combat, so you can line the buffs up or even apply them before engaging a monster. Lastly, remember when it comes to the melodies, they don't have an infinite range or an infinite duration, so you have to be wary of how close your teammates are to you. Although that being said, as long as they're in the general vicinity, they should be affected by them, and you also have to keep an eye on the buff indicator in the top right of the corner in case any of the buffs wear out. But anyway, let's move on to talk about the pros and cons of the weapon. The major pro for the weapon are the melody buffs and the actual overall support nature of the weapon. Being able to buff not only you but your entire team will definitely help in any fight. On top of that as well, the sheer amount of buffs that the hunting horn can provide comes in very handy in pretty much every single hunt. The next major pro is the fact that it's a blunt weapon, allowing for knockout and exhaust damage against monsters. Should you be able to actually knock out a monster, this is a great way to open them up, incapacitating them and allowing you and your team to deal decent damage. And lastly, the weapon has a decent reach. It shouldn't be dismissed. But moving on to the cons, unfortunately the biggest con for the weapon is its slow speed. Now when I mean slow speed, I mean its attack speed. Each swing is very slow. And whilst you can alleviate this issue slightly with flourish mechanics and the handle poke when it comes to queuing up notes, it's nonetheless an issue hunting horn players will have to get used to. And the last major con is the long animations when it comes to the attacks, and especially the performance and encore actions. These can leave your hunter at risk, and although it can be alleviated slightly with moves like the evade roll, numerous times have I had melodies interrupted or ruined because of these long animation times. Overall, the hunting horn could be considered an overlooked weapon. It's not the most popular in Monster Hunter World, but nonetheless it's very useful, and whilst its role may be primarily a support weapon, it shouldn't be entirely dismissed. Whilst yes, in a group it performs much better than when playing solo, but even solo it can still be useful. The sheer amount of melody buffs it can provide to a hunting team can be incredibly useful, enhancing not only yourself but your entire party. Also, when it comes to dealing damage, it's no joke. Whilst it may not be the best damage dealing weapon in the game, it shouldn't be overlooked. So staying in the back and just performing songs is not really the optimal way to play with this weapon. Combining both damage dealing and melody performance is what you want to strive for with this weapon. If you're a player who loves music, who likes to play a support role, and occasionally likes to hit a monster quite hard, then I can definitely recommend the hunting horn. Now remember that the damage numbers and effectiveness of the weapons can vary due to numerous factors, from gear, buffs, monster defenses to even the environment. All of these can help or hinder a weapon's performance. With that in mind, learning as much as you can about a weapon can help achieve a successful hunt. Anyway, I hope this video has been informative, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you a hunter's guide to the hunting horn in Monster Hunter World. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.